defining what is received pronunciation. On the handout there's a little table, a little tabulation of the kinds of problem that arise when somebody poses the question, is such and such a thing part of RP? Beautiful? Or is it not RP? And the problem is you have to decide what your criteria are before you can reach a decision on such questions. I've given three headings, three column headings, which represent different kinds of criteria. First of all, the socio-linguistic criteria. Now, from this point of view, we say received pronunciation is whatever the people at the top of the social scale in England do. We listen to Princess Di and other members of the royal family, and we observe their usage. And perhaps not just the royal family, of course, but people of a generally aristocratic, upper-class background, perhaps upper-middle-class background as well. This reflects the perception that received pronunciation is the speech of people at the top end of the social scale. And this is buttressed by the fact that in England there are sharp geographical differences. But the further up the social scale you go, the smaller these geographical differences are, till you reach an area where you really can't detect them anymore. And this is why, with people who speak in received pronunciation, or something very close to it, you probably can't tell what part of the country they come from. The second column is headed Ideal. This reflects a quite different view of what RP is. This reflects the view that received pronunciation is the distillation of good practice. That we have a community view about what is good and what is bad in pronunciation. And we all agree that, for example, H dropping, saying hammer instead of hammer, is not suitable. That pronouncing the H is better. And in this idealistic view, received pronunciation is the sum of all these views of what is good in pronunciation. And insofar as we have as a community a coherent view about this, I'm not sure how far that is, but if we do have one, then I say RP is the distillation of what we consider to be good. The third column is headed EFL. This is English as a foreign language, and this reflects the need of teachers of English as a foreign language and learners of EFL to have a firm criterion that they can refer to, that will be recorded in dictionaries, shown in any textbooks that tell you about pronunciation, used by the actors who record materials for learners, used as far as possible by teachers of EFL, and so on and so on. The problem is that these three criteria may give different answers to some of the questions we may want to ask. So the first line is this matter of smoothing. I talked to you the other day about smoothing. You remember we can change fire to far. Equally we can change going to going. Where are you going? The house is on fire. Going far. This smoothing is a fact of life for sociolinguistic RP, that is to say, it is observably part of the usage, optional perhaps, but nevertheless pretty general, among those who natively speak with this kind of accent. On the other hand, does a teacher ever criticize a child in school for doing non-smoothing, for omitting smoothing? Does the teacher ever say, you shouldn't say fire, you should say fire? Does the teacher ever say, you shouldn't say going, you ought to say going? Certainly not. This is not part of our perception of what ought to happen. So it's a clear mismatch between sociolinguistic fact and ideal view. Do we teach it to learners of English as a foreign language? Well, no, on the whole, it's an unnecessary complication. I think it's useful, myself, to teach it receptively, so that people know what's meant by science. They know that means silence. When somebody says, where are you going? They can understand, where are you going? But it's not necessary to teach it productively. Second row on our table is our intrusion. When we have a word ending in certain other vowels, and the next word begins with a vowel, we tend to link these with an R sound, whether or not there's a letter R in the spelling. So criticising someone's essay, someone's punctuation, I might say, you ought to put a comma in here. A comma in. That's what comes naturally to me. That's what comes naturally to virtually all English people, though not to Scots or Irish or Americans. So again, it's a sociolinguistic fact of life. Easily observed. It's done, in fact, by virtually everybody, optionally, not obligatory, but it's available, it's one of the options for virtually everybody who isn't making a conscious effort to avoid it. Now, of course, there are people who are speech conscious, who have drilled themselves not to do this. They tend to omit linking R's as well as intrusive R's if they do this, but anyhow, there are such people. But apart from them, you do get a great deal of intrusive R. Idealistically, though, people who haven't thought about the matter tend to condemn it. Indeed, many of the speech conscious precisely condemn it and therefore try to avoid it, because it's pronouncing a sound that isn't represented by a letter of the spelling. So again, a mismatch. Do we teach it to foreign learners? No, we don't. On the whole. Because it's perfectly acceptable to say comma in. It's not wrong. On the other hand, I sometimes encourage my advanced learners to do it because it sounds like. It sounds much more like a native speaker if you do intrusive R in the expressive places. Comma in here. Third row is the question of in words like where or where. Not part of ordinary English speech at any social level nowadays, in England, though again the Scots and the Irish and some Americans do it. Nevertheless, quite widely it's regarded as something better to say where than to say where. Do we do it in the EFL? Not in the British model. This is really thanks to Daniel Jones' far-sightedness, who insisted it's not part of ordinary pronunciation, and those who are in the American tradition do learn to say where, even though by now perhaps 1/3 of Americans have followed our lead in dropping the H and saying where